Oh my goodness, Happy New Year everyone. Welcome back to episode 23 of Final Boss TV. I am your host, Adam K, aka Bay, and tonight we have Moonkins. Right back in the thick of it, doing class episodes as we normally do. We have Moonkins tonight. We are joined by Cyous from Promethean and Zoomkins from Blood Legion. But first, no mojitos during the raid, back from vacation, the lovely co-host of Final Boss TV, Anna. Hello, Anna.
Hey, it's good to be back. Nice to see everybody again. Well, it's not good to be back, but it's good to actually have access to real first world internet once more.
Yeah, did you check?
The only thing I couldn't live without.
Oh, I know, right? How did you have to deal with that? Did you like set up a thing and hit refresh and walk away for 10 minutes and come back to it?
Well, we had Wi-Fi at the place where I was, which was nice, but the Wi-Fi was limited to something like 200 kps. It was really bad.
Nice.
And the owner of the place told me he would take the guest limit off for me on Sunday, but I ran some speed tests and the limit was exactly the same. If they had pumped the internet up the way it was in the office, then it would have been fine. But honestly, I had also just arrived, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to set up, and I was kind of bummed out. I wanted to do beachside.
Yeah.
I wanted to do beachside show, but instead y'all just got my voice and me disconnecting a bit. But it was a really fun show anyway, and I'm glad for everyone who came to watch it.
No, the show was amazing last week. The comments on it are awesome. So
yeah.
It's been a lot of fun. If you didn't see our season finale episode with Coltrane and Brutal last week, there was guitar playing and singing and just ridiculous. That's a 2-hour episode with a 30-minute after show. Even with the technical difficulty, was still awesome. So you can go check that out on our YouTube.
Yeah,
the
whole thing is worth watching. You guys really should go watch it.
Yeah.
And the after show, definitely.
So then, to go right into this, our guests tonight again are the Thunder Chickens themselves. We have Mr. Cyous from Promethean. Thank you for joining us tonight, sir. Hello.
Hello, guys. Hello, guys. How are we doing? What the Here we go.
Yeah,
there we go.
It was working.
PG-13.
He was an SHI. We're good.
I said it from the streets. Hey, guys. How are we doing tonight?
Good. All right. You're all working. And then from Blood Legion, we have the Zoomkins himself. Hello, Zoom.
How you doing? How's it going, everybody?
Good. It's glad to guys have you on the show. It's good to get right back into the thick of it because we did two community kind of fun episodes back to back, and I wanted to make sure we get back with you guys and do awesome class ones. We have the next 3 or 4 all already almost set up for you guys as well, so that'll be a lot of fun when we keep getting awesome guests on for you guys. So I think Anna wants to kick this one off since she can now, since everything is working and she's not only on a phone sitting on a lounge chair.
Yeah, let's go with this. I'd like to hear a little bit more from our guests about the kind of things that we do. We know that Zoomkins is here from Blood Legion and Cyous is here from Promethean, but Zoomkins, tell us a little bit more about about what you do on the internet, where we can find you, whether you stream, where we can see more of you.
Well, for our main raids in Blood Legion, usually Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I do stream. I mainly stick to Twitter, my social media. That's where I post anything new or what's going on. So
a man after my own heart. I love Twitter as well.
Exactly. It's kind of spammy sometimes, but it gets it through. There's 140 characters.
Do
you do a whole lot of do you do any work with the Moonkin community on websites that we can find you at? Do you post on Elitist Jerks mostly, or?
Not really. I used to in the past, but not so much now. There's a lot of other people who have a lot of really good resources out there. I browse them and I'll comment, but I don't upkeep. Cyous does a lot of stuff on the main forums, obviously, but I mainly just do stuff on my stream, YouTube, and Twitter, as of lately.
Sounds good. So let's hear some from Cyous then. Where can we find you? The official forums, it sounds like?
Yes, I am typically on the official forums posting in practically every single balanced Druid thread there is, PvE and PvP, but that's just what it is. I upkeep the balanced Druid guide on the forums as well, and I don't have a social media that I use often. I have a Twitter, I have a YouTube, but those are more for, blaming Celestion and other stuff.
That's actually
everyone's favorite pastime.
That's actually what he posted when we were talking in the pre-show. He said, so I'm going to use your Twitter for your social media. He's like, okay, but I usually just blame Celestalon on it. I don't do a whole lot. You can find me on the forums most likely, so that was good.
It's a pretty effective way of commenting on class mechanics.
It is.
It's just blaming Celestalon for everything.
It is. Gotta get that trending on Twitter when Warlords comes out. That'd be great.
We'll work
Blame
on it.
Celestron.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So the
Viva
first,
La Ghost Crawler.
well, I mean, that's why I said it was an art form yet. I think Celestion actually made fun of himself for not being able to do what Ghostcrawler did in 140 characters. He's still getting used to it. So it's hard. You
He's
gotta-
doing pretty well. We
Yeah,
appreciate
yeah.
him.
Oh,
We love
absolutely.
having somebody to blame. It's always nice.
Oh, okay, you went the different
Someone
way
to
with that.
complain to on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody had to take up the mantle of nerfing paladins.
Oh, all about paladins. I mean,
Always.
of course, the person responsible for dropping all the melee and warlords, right, Anna?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Got to blame somebody.
Yeah. So the first thing I wanted to get into here with you guys is I usually want to do a little bit of background on the class, and for Balance Druid specifically, you guys really didn't exist early on. Balance, your original 31 point talent of vanilla was just Hurricane. So you really didn't get much besides like an AoE spell when you went down that tree. You didn't actually become a Balance Druid until 1.8, right? You actually got Moonkin form. So, I mean, just to go along with you guys, how long have you been playing Balance, and how has your trip been with the changes to Balance from Vanilla, TBC, Wrath, Cataclysm, and then we'll go into Mop in a little bit here. So, Zoom, what about you?
Early on, like vanilla, when I first started playing, I didn't really raid a lot till Burning Crusade. But I started off as a rogue, and I had an alt druid that I just messed around with. And it wasn't until I think later, near Black Temple and Sunwell, I started playing Moonkin more as a main, to where I actually like was able to get gear for it. But even back then, it was like, you know, spam Starfire, stack lots of haste. You were like a one-button class, like a warlock, but you did, you know, 1/10 the damage. But you brought, but you brought the 5% crit.
You did, that's
pretty much
correct.
it.
You had the
Yeah.
aura. That was all really you had back in the day, was just the aura,
Well,
right?
they also brought with Fairy Fire, put like 3% hit on the boss, but no one really
Oh, yeah.
utilized that as well.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know.
Those were terrible days, honestly, as casters,
Yeah.
because you would gem, you'd gear under the hit cap, but you'd get it if you had the Fairy Fire. Ugh, it's so wild. And what about you, Cyous? What about your early story?
My early story consists of me rolling a priest and getting stuck on the Zeppelin, and I had no idea what was going on, so I literally deleted that character and I started anew. I'm not kidding. I had no idea. I was new to MMOs. I didn't know. I thought my character was lost, so I rolled a hunter in vanilla and took a break after that, and came back at the end of Wrath of the Lich King, and I started playing a druid because my friends wanted, you know, a tank, and I'm like, okay, well, I want to play something, and if I don't like tanking, I can do healer. Druids, why not? So I played Feral at the end of Lich King as a tank. Then for Cataclysm, because there was literally no agility gear, and this is true, I rolled balance because I was not getting enough questing gear to keep up with the mobs. So that's why I'm a monster now.
Really? That's like a really interesting defining purpose that you went, or like switch that was like, oh, well, there's not enough gear, I'm just going to go Boomkin, right? It wasn't like a passion thing, or like, I'm going to try this out. You almost were like forced. That's crazy.
Well, it's a convenient. I mean, convenience is important. If it's a convenience thing, then that can be a meaningful reason to switch too.
That's true. Fair enough. And then I put on here on the notes that I guess did you both experience the melee for mana part with bonus attack power and that in TBC? Like what do you? Because I don't know this about me, but I actually played vanilla Boomkin. It was awful because you would go in like, you know, one or two like full rotations of your spells. You need to go melee for mana and then walk back out and then yeah. But did you guys both experience that?
Yeah, a lot in was like Karazhan. Like a lot of the early set bonuses in Burning Crusade were all about mana. They would just give you mana back over and over and over again. So I would get a feral staff, and I'd have to swap and run into melee range and hit the boss a bunch of times. It was really big in PvP too. Also, just running around hitting people in the head for a couple hundred damage to like never run But yeah, it was pretty ridiculous.
No, it totally was. Do you miss it at all?
No, not at all.
Okay. I didn't know if you wanted to have that like come back in some shape or form. No, terrible. I was so goofy. Yep. And then Wrath and Kata, you guys became kind of similar to Shadow Priest with that 15% damage reduction, but then that was also now removed, right? All you gain now is just the armor, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I mean, in the past it was just armor,
Yeah.
And then they gave us like the damage reduction, like overall, and then they took it away from us again and gave us the armor again, but less armor. Before, I think it was around 300%.
Yeah, it was
Now
a
it's
lot.
like yeah.
It was basically bear form.
I mean, you kind of are a bear on two legs. Let's be honest.
Hands are kin.
You're a tarred, feathered ogre, basically. Yeah.
A jumping, dancing bear.
Oh, jeez. It's so that's silly bear, but
Now, are Moonkins the casters that jump around a whole lot when they cast? Or at one point, did you guys not do
Moonfire.
that?
I mean, we do
Yeah.
that this tier. We jump around a lot because we get instant proc star surges like crazy, but yeah. I know I do. I just run around Moonfire.
Yeah, well, that's what I think what Anna's alluding to here is that spacebar is actually part of your rotation as a Moonkin, right?
Yeah, between every Moonfire. I mean,
Okay, just
Yeah.
making sure. That
I've
helps
actually
you-
rebound my
That just
spacebar.
it strikes me as so weird that
Yeah.
you have that you have to move your character to enable spells. Basically, that's kind of awesome.
Well, in Cataclysm, Lunar Shower, you had to move in order to maintain it. So you would see people strafing and jumping just because jumping was easier than holding down D or
Yeah.
A for 3 seconds.
Yeah, I got you. Okay,
Ah,
that's
okay.
what it was. So it's actually it was form over just having fun then, because you actually needed to do that.
Yeah,
Oh, no,
a
it's
lot
still
of people did it for Lunar Shower before, like when you had to move for it, and it's just kind of like if you played during then, you still kind of move around a lot when you dot because it's kind of ingrained in you
It's stuck.
that you need to move like when you die. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just part of the movement thing. But that's a good point, because you don't really see any other casters. They can't jump. No other casters can move as much as you guys can. Can
Warlocks.
they? I guess a little bit. Not destruction warlocks now though. They are chain casting maniacs. So,
I guess that depends on whether you count hunters.
do you guys count hunters along?
They're
your
not a
kid?
caster.
They're not,
Yeah, I guess not. Nope.
they're not an energy caster. No. Shot down.
So on that topic, let's hear about any old stories of frustrations that you've had with your Moonkin over the years. Anything that used to be really annoying, or any stories of any trials that you had, or just have you always enjoyed it every minute?
For me, I've loved being Moonkin like ever since I really swapped to it in the past. It's been frustrating every time they changed the mechanic itself. When they changed Eclipse a bunch of times during Wrath, they changed it probably like 3 or 4 times, the Eclipse mechanic, and it was kind of frustrating relearning, but I really loved the whole like dynamic and the spells and the whole look of the Moonkin. It's been a lot of fun.
Cyous, what about you?
I started in, I guess you can say I started in Kata, so I had a more polished Eclipse system to work with, so I don't really have any woes with it. But the change to Shooting Stars for Mr. Pandera was a lot more fluid, and the casting rotation from Cataclysm to Mop has really smoothed out, and that's what I liked about it.
Okay.
Kata wasn't so much, but this is really nice now.
Well, what exactly changed for Mr. Pandaria? Explain a little bit for us, those of us who don't play Moonkins.
They changed how the Eclipse calculations work. For Eclipse, you have 100 energy both ways, and the middle is 0. So they had, I think it was like 15 energy or 20 energy for Starfire in Cataclysm. I can't remember. It was
It was
an
15.
awkward number.
Or it was like a 13
then-
or something, yeah.
I think Wrath was 12 or 13, or 12 and a half or something like that. Something weird.
It was a weird
So you
number. Yeah.
You had, I have videos of it. You have this bar, and it's like, okay, you have 26 energy, 2 energy, and now you're at 14 energy on the other side. What's going on? Okay. You're confused. You just keep going, you go back and forth, you go back and forth. And right now it's, okay, for Solar Eclipse, you have 15 and 20 as your numbers. Wrath is worth 15, and Star Search is worth 20. And for Lunar, you have 20 and 20. Starfire is 20. So they kind of just made the numbers easier, and they balanced around that new playstyle. And it's just really smooth. You don't have to do this awkward math where you have 45 energy at one point, but on the same cast bar, 30 seconds later, you have 32, 33. It's just all this little random numbers that, yeah, they smoothed it out for you, which is really nice.
That doesn't sound, because on like a math perspective, when you have to like know how many spells you need to cast to get into the next eclipse, if you like, it's a weird. I got 2 over, so if I do 1 more, then I can. But if I don't do 1, then that sounds awful.
There was a in the past too, you would get a lot of like you'd hit 99 energy, and you'd have to do a whole extra cast for like 1 energy just to
Ugh.
hit a new eclipse.
I remember
Oh
that.
no.
But that's
That
where
is-
the even numbers changed to make it a little better, a little
Okay.
smoother.
Fair enough. And only two spells, the one main spell on each side, and then Star Surge gives you power for either or, correct?
Yep.
Right.
Okay. So that's simple enough, but the numbers being simple now kind of matches that. That's good. That's good. Nice. What about so that's one of the biggest changes with Mists of Pandaria was the Eclipse system. And anything else come around? What about the talents? I know we're going to
Let's talk about Dream of Cenarius. Yes.
Yeah. Can we please do this? Dream of Cenarius. Cyous first?
Sure. So, Dream of Cenarius, before it was the 5.4 version, was a very overpowered version in beta because it just gave too much bonus. Then they started reducing the bonus, and from that bonus, the numbers became what they were, which was like 25% extra dot damage on your next 2 dot spells, Moonfire and Sunfire. With that said, the only way to activate that buff was to cast Healing Touch. Now, Ferals use DOC now, and they don't have to hardcast Healing Touch. So, 1 GCD, let's just say 1 second. For us, it's and I'm looking at my cast bar right now, it is a 2-second cast for me. However, 2 seconds is lower because you have Nature's Grace and maybe a meta jump proc, but it's still a longer cast time, and you have to stand still because you have to cast it. And what you had to do there was cast Healing Touch, dot up the mobs that you were targeting, and if you had multiple mobs, cast Healing Touch again, dot up the other mobs, and if you had more, keep going. And you have you have Nature's Swiftness for it, so you can have an instant Healing Touch every now and then, which is okay, but it's not frequent enough.
Yeah.
Then, for all this effort that you do, it's a marginal DPS increase of probably a couple hundred.
How long does the buff last to get on yourself when you Healing Touch?
30 seconds.
Okay.
So you cast it and you have 2 stacks of this buff. You're going to use them within the 30 seconds. It's just you're going to have to recast it within the next time. And once the charges are consumed, obviously you have to recast it in order to get it again.
Now,
it's a very clunky playstyle.
I asked you this in the meet and greet we had yesterday. It's just not that good for PvP though, because I thought it was like a PvP. When I'm reading the talent, I'm like, all right, that sounds like a PvP talent. Could you heal yourself? You do some more damage. You heal yourself, do some more damage. But it's not, I guess, because you have to stand still and it's a 2-second cast. You can easily locked out of it. It doesn't really sound very conducive to PvP at all.
Well, in PvP, you have much less haste. I'm in
That's also true.
570 something, or 570-ish gear right now.
Yeah.
So my cast time's pretty low, comparatively speaking. In PvP, it's 2.5 seconds.
Yeah.
2.5 seconds. Huh? Are you casting? Are you casting? Maybe are you casting? Interrupted.
Yeah. That's like death in the arena. Like if you want to hard cast something that long, yeah, that's terrible.
It is terrible. Let's put it that way.
And what about you, Zoom? What about your thoughts on Dream of Cenarius?
Well, yeah, it's the issue too is that say you want to dot up. So there's like 3 targets out. You want to put 2 dots on all of them. The amount of time it takes to put up 2 dots and Healing Touch, 2 dots Healing Touch, like by that time, I mean your dots are starting to fall off on your first target already, and none of that is gaining you any energy. Because the whole point about playing balance is going back and forth through your eclipses. So you're losing Nature's Grace time. You're losing a lot of stuff. So even though technically on paper it can be a DPS gain on some fights, the actual playstyle of it having to move somewhere, or maybe an ability happens or the boss goes away for a second, like accounting for all those situations, its gain goes down to maybe even a negative.
Ugh. So is that an overall impact of Dream of Cenarius being just like literally the talent you just never take right now?
Well,
Or-
before, I mean, it wasn't. Now they kind of changed it to where it's a little better, but you do run into the same situations because it's activated the same way. You still have to cast a Healing Touch in order to do it, but now you get the benefit through your entire Eclipse. Now it just gives you a bonus damage on the Eclipse, and still, I mean, it can be useful in a sense, but I mean, spells like Heart of the Wild give you your damage benefit constantly compared to having to sit there and activate it and plan it out.
Yeah.
So some fights it'll be a gain, other fights it's not.
Okay. Huh.
See, we kind of have a mechanic like that for paladins that never really caught on for Rets. It's that we can glyph Word of Glory that increases our damage per holy power after we cast a Word of Glory. But the damage that you give up by doing that has just never been worth actually casting the heal. I think that the devs have always kind of wanted to make that work in a way. It's just it's never really been worthwhile for us. I like the idea that if you cast a heal, then your damage increases. Just the general idea for hybrids, but
Yeah.
sounds like it's at least worked. Even though it's been clunky for you guys and they've gone through different iterations, at least they've come closer with Moonkins than they have with Paladins.
Yeah, this last iteration is actually, usable and like pretty good in a lot of situations, like I've said. But more often than
If
not,
they made Healing Touch, if they made Healing Touch give 2 charges, and Rejuve give 1 charge for the effort you would use, so you would cast 2 Rejuves in order to get 2 benefits of it, so it would actually be a little bit more smoother in a playstyle sense, where you don't have to hard cast this Healing Touch, and you could just Rejuve, hit Eclipse, Rejuve again if you want, or you can do a Healing Touch and you don't even have to Rejuve.
Huh.
Stuff like that would be nice.
Chat room
It's
brings
just-
up Nisdonok, I suppose. Niston brings up utilizing your cast time reduction as your meta and Nature's Grace makes it easier, but that seems to me that you need the meta and another part of your kit to then watch both of those procs to then make use of a healing touch on yourself to gain damage. Whereas
The
you're
issue
trying to
isn't
reduce it
casting.
to basically like a GCD with that amount of haste. Like
Yeah.
you're trying to utilize that time.
The
Like I
issue
said, it's
isn't
a-
necessarily casting, though. It's
I was
you
gonna
can't
explain
move
Go
with
ahead.
it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's also true too. Even if you can get down to a GCD, it doesn't seem like that's that much of a gain because you have to game it. Whereas your other 2 talents are just kind of like they just give you things for free almost, right? Comparatively.
The biggest issue too is that you don't gain energy from casting that healing touch, so it also wastes that meta time and Nature's Grace time in trade for the damage buff. So that's what you're gauging also. So there's a lot of little decisions you have to make.
Yeah, that does sound like a decision. Absolutely. Well, I guess of that whole thing, what are your thoughts on... I know we talked about this a little bit before, but your thoughts on the whole Moon DPS, Sun DPS rotation, where you're basically like one of those crazy ships at the fair that goes up one side, then it goes down and goes up the other side, and goes the teeter-totter. What do you guys feel about that rotation? Is it unique? Is it fun? Like, do you like it? Could it have some changes? What do you think?
It has its ups and downs.
Well,
So
yes, it does.
it's like a roller coaster. It starts off really strong, then it levels out, and you basically go up and down. But it's unique in the sense that you don't have to really pay attention too much. You're just kind of looking for Star Search procs and watching your dot timers, and then you just press your filler. So it's not complex, but the damage that it is, it's fairly unique in terms of playstyle.
Okay. Fair enough. Zoom?
Like a lot of people that pay attention to analytics or world logs and whatnot, you'll notice that our damage is pretty steady in that sense, to where it'll have regular peaks and valleys because of the Eclipse system. Compared to other classes, you'll see them all over the place
Yeah.
a lot of times. So I mean, our damage is fairly consistent, but the hard part about it is hitting the right eclipses when you need them. Like say, there's a big AoE phase coming up, but I'm like, I'm just leaving solar right now into lunar, and it'd take me like 30 or 40 seconds to make it back to solar.
Yeah.
So I can't utilize that hurricane damage or the extra hurricane damage. So I mean, hitting certain eclipses at the right parts of the fight can be a little frustrating, but that's really about it.
Fair enough. Okay. But it's not frustrating. So then we also have on here, how is it similar or different from like demonic power then?
Well, demonic power is different in a sense because it's a resource that you use for extra damage. Eclipse is basically, it's more like a regulated bar telling you that you need to, use this spell or these spells are stronger for a moment. So it's not really like as much of a resource as demonic power is, more or less than just I don't really know how to say it, just more like a key or a guide saying that you need to do this or you need to work your way back to the other side.
Yeah.
But it's not just like a resource that you pull from.
Sure. Yeah. Like I said, it's like a teeter-totter. You just work back and forth into it. It's like a constant build system, whereas, say, with like a we had monks on previously, where you build with energy to build chi, and you use your chi to use abilities, whereas you guys are always kind of pushing toward one way, and then you change your spells to push the other way. So, okay. All right. I gotcha. Anything else on that, Saya?
Not really much more to add. It's a teeter-totter. You go up and down, and you keep going up and down.
Is that...
Well, do you find it fun?
It's fun in the sense of when you have gear to actually maintain a fluid playstyle. It's really smooth when you actually have a lot of gear. At the earlier gear levels, like back in tier 14,
not so much. Now, is it really predictable? Is there a lot of unpredictability to your rotation, or do you know exactly how it's going to go at your specific gear level? You have a feel for it?
At lower gear levels, it's more or less you're hard casting your filler a lot, and you have a Star Search proc every now and then. Towards what was it? Throne of Thunder, you were having a lot more Star Search procs, but that's also due to the fight mechanics and the fight design itself. Most of it was multi-dotting, and more Star Search procs. Yay! And for Siege, I'm pretty sure Zoomkins can attest to this, but you pretty much would be casting Star Search a lot more often than you would be even in Throne.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get into that a little more later, but yeah, Zoom, anything else on that one?
No, I mean, it's predictable in a sense where you have to like gauge how many casts it takes to get from 0 to 100 energy, but the Star Surges can really like make a huge difference a lot of times, because Wrath is 15, Star Surge is 20, so you kind of have to be like, okay, well, I'm at 60, so this one Star Surge is going to pull me over instead of doing a few more Wraths, something like that.
Yeah.
So instead of saving it for an Eclipse.
Okay. Fair enough.
You kind of have to do like a little bit of small math in your head as you're doing it. Like, it's going to take me 1 or 2 more casts.
Yeah.
Maybe I can fit in a cast before I have to move for this ability, and then I can redot in my next 2 GCDs to move, something like that.
Okay. That's like a plan. So then, to move on to the next big little topic here, I wanted to go
one
with...
of my favorites.
Yeah, I know. To preface this whole thing, we do have a question. Depending on when you guys submit or what kind of questions you guys send us in for the show, which the link is down below, or you can go over to FinalBossTV and send us questions each week. When we let you guys know on social media who's coming on the show, or at the end of the main show, you can always start sending your questions in early. So, like, when I tell you who's coming on the show next week, if you have questions for that class, send them in right there. But we usually do questions at the end of the show. However, it depends on which kind it is, because sometimes they preface a topic we're already going to talk about. So I'll just put it in the show like it is. So we have a question real quick that came in from... We have Dolson on US Melganis. And he asks, do you guys think a Moonkin deserves a raid spot in cutting-edge progression over a Warlock or a Rogue?
I'll take it first.
Yeah.
Yes, because raiding is not all about damage. You have battle reses, tranquilities, roar, vortex, typhoon. You have all of these different little tools that you have in your arsenal. You pretty much have the most utility in the game at this point, I would say.
I would kind of agree with that. I mean, to some degree, I mean, we've talked about before on the show of how there's too many cooldowns outside of like the healer core, right? Because there's just so many to account for. But I mean, we have the list right here on our show notes that Druids do bring a whole bag of tricks. So,
yeah, like all through progression.
As is typical of hybrids.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I spec'd Heart of the Wild, and so did Bushino, the other Moonkin in my guild, because we use those as 2 raid cooldowns. Because with Heart of the Wild popped, it's like as strong or if not stronger than a Resto Trank for a raid. So that was really huge in a lot of our strategies. Things like people said too, like Ursul's Vortex is really big because it keeps things in place. It's almost like a pseudo Death Grip. Solar Beam, we use Typhoon. Like a lot of times we just try to figure out what we can do for a fight for like the strategy, because Moonkins have, a huge toolkit. Like we can knock back, we can slow, we can root, a bunch of that stuff. So, and Roar is huge too for moving places as a raid group. So you do want a couple Moonkin, but going over that is something, it's not a class you would stack, but it is definitely something you should have a couple of in a raid.
Yeah, you gotta pepper them in there. Because even when chat rooms bring up now like what rogues and warlocks have, and like warlocks have gateways and health stones and damage, and rogues have bomb and tricks, and Shadow Step for weird mechanical stuff that comes in handy sometimes. But then we have for you guys, and for Feral Druids as well, you guys have Roar, which is an AoE raid sprint, Tranquility, CC from Cyclone or Earthel's Vortex, Solar Beam, and AoE Silence, Symbiosis to other classes that either give your tanks other cooldowns or whatnot. You have Cenarian, Ward, and Ysera's Gift, which we'll talk about here in a second, and then you have Typhoon. Unless I'm forgetting any, it's a whole lot more than Smoke Bomb and Tricks. I mean, not to devalue that, but that's
Roar
a lot
in
of
particular
stuff.
Roar in particular is
Yeah.
really major. I mean, it's one of those things where you strat around having X roars in the raid. So
Yeah.
Absolutely you do.
Definitely.
Yeah. There's a lot of fights that really utilize that, I think, more so in Heroic Glacier and then into tier 16. There's a lot of fights you can use it for. Repositioning and moving your raid and stuff like that. So
Even like
I
this
think
tier,
some of
like
it is the
Valkyrac too.
Mhm.
Unheroic
Yeah, and Malkorok
utilize roars.
was a constraint of the encounter. I know that debuff that you should have run out. I think there was no way to make that debuff such that you could use Roar to let people move, but not also remove the debuff.
you remove the
So it ended up kind of trivializing the encounter, and there was no way to do it without completely breaking the way that Roar worked on that
Yeah.
debuff. So, and that was kind of a bummer because, I mean, it's not like that encounter was very hard anyway, but I hate it when we can use like chained spell mechanics to just completely trivialize an entire mechanic. I mean, nobody ever ran that debuff out. I don't think anyone actually did Malkorok running that debuff out. And it's just kind of disappointing. It makes a fairly straightforward fight even easier. So,
Yeah,
but that's Roar for you.
Those are little oopsie daisies that I don't think that Blizzard really accounts for sometimes because, again, I think it was a limitation of the debuff itself. That if you made yourself move during it, you would still remove it. So, because doesn't Freedom work on it and other things like that remove movement in scenario?
If it removes
Windwalk
slow,
Totem.
Windwalk
lets you
Totem.
move
Yeah,
with
Windwalk
it,
Totem works
but
as
it doesn't
well.
dispel
So does
it.
Freedom.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
move during it, but you don't have the slow, so
Wait,
you just walk away.
Doesn't Windwalk dispel it?
No, Windwalk only lets you move with it. Roar completely dispels it.
Yeah,
Right.
Well, because Roar has
I
like a
know
movement.
Freedom only lets you move with it as well.
Yeah, but I think because Roar has both the movement and the snare removal thing, I think it just it just destroys it. Yeah, it almost
Yeah, it's a snowflake ability that does that.
So then I also put on here, we all know there's tons of people to symbosize with your ability. Some of them are kind of useless, even though I've actually found one use for Solar Beam on Enhancement Shamans finally. Woo! But just Heroic Garrosh for the mind controls. But that's about what are kind of like the really good symbioses that you guys get or give to people.
It depends on the fight. For Raw Den, giving it to a Rep Paladin if you were needing a little bit more damage on the orbs.
Orthok.
Wrath.
I like
Orthok
I like
too.
having. I actually always claim I used to claim a symbiosis on Thok just
Yeah?
because I hate doing nothing for a little bit. I like to feel the wrath.
That's true.
Well, if you got it from a Feral Divine Shield, no big deal, right?
Yeah. The feral. Actually, it's our feral that always gives it to me because he wants the
Call
divine
it.
shield.
Yeah, Divine Shield. There you go.
And then the Ellies get Solar Beam, which I know we utilize on. What do we use Solar Beam on? We use it on Garrosh, I think.
Garrosh and
Just-
Megara last year.
Yep.
I guess we could have used it on Megara. Yep, I never did. I was just tunneling the boss on that point.
Yeah,
That's true.
Oh,
we did that
lucky
in Megara
you.
too.
Yeah. Okay. There's a couple.
Symbiosis is really nice for other classes. Like
Well, it's
in
yeah.
those, they're very specific, but they're not underpowered. They're
Yeah.
situationally strong. And for us, the three big ones are Unending Resolve, AMS, and Cloak of Shadows.
Yeah.
That's right. Because I think it's Feral Druids that our Feral Druid that does it a lot. He gets Cloak so he can Heart Trank and Cloak and stand in like terrible damage that would have otherwise killed him.
Yeah.
But he can stand still and Cloak and then Trank. So there's a lot
Ferals get Kidney Shot, or no, they get Redirect.
of
I think it's the bubble that they probably
Yeah,
get.
you're
yeah,
thinking
yeah,
of
yeah,
Bubble.
yeah, Paladin.
He
Yeah,
probably
from
hands it
Paladin.
to Paladin. He gets
yeah.
Bubble.
So either one, it's the same thing. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I did. Okay.
And you can also give it to a DPS warrior, and they get Roar, which is really useful
Another
in the
Roar, yeah.
in the context of the Roar discussion. We actually do that. I think we're short on Druids. I don't remember. Maybe we've had a Druid out a bit, but we've done that to get our third Roar for a couple of fights where we need 3, and
Yeah,
we've
in Heart of Fear,
symbiosis to
we
warrior.
did that. We used to give it to Warrior 2 for the Windlord, or not Blade Lord, the one where you run back and forth with the wind.
The Blade Lord with
Blade
wind.
Lord Yeah,
the
Blade Lord with wings.
Blade Lord Tic Tac is
I really wonder if they misnamed them or named them on purpose and they just have different abilities that are, I don't know, whatever. Those are always funny to me.
I wouldn't put it past Blizzard to have switched the names on purpose.
On purpose, just to make people go like, why are they doing the wrong abilities? Yeah.
And what Niston actually said in chat also is true. Unending Resolve, not only does it give you the 50% damage reduction, but it makes it, because of Warlock ability, you can't be interrupted. So on Thok, it's 13 seconds or whatever
very nice.
Not being interrupted.
Your personal diva aura, basically, to be interrupted.
Yeah, it works like that on Animus too with the Jolt.
Nice, very nice.
Well, moving
I
beyond
actually got
just a list
interrupted
of
on
the...
that. Maybe it was
Did it?
bugged.
Yeah. I think it was, or was it AMS that lets you not get interrupted? One
No,
of the
it's
two.
I
not
think the
AMS.
interrupt was just a forced mechanic on it, because nothing I did, well, I took unending. So I kept getting interrupted on it, and I stopped doing it eventually.
Really? There's
Yeah.
a confirmed deny on this. Someone, quick, go to LFR Thok.
I guess I don't really
The
remember.
Druid.
Them.
Maybe, yeah.
Or no,
Well,
not Thok. It's on Animus.
On Animus. Oh,
On
Animus.
On
Thok,
Animus.
I know. On Thok, I know you don't get interrupted.
Oh, okay.
Maybe
like-
when they nerfed it from 50% down to 40%, they did that, right? Because ours used to be stronger than Warlock's.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
I
they
don't-
fixed it then.
I think it's still 50% there, isn't it?
Don't
I
mind-
think
Well-
they only nerfed the Warlocks. I don't think they nerfed ours. Ours is still stronger than theirs.
I thought we had a 50%. Then they
Mhm.
nerfed ours down to 40% because 50 is bigger than 40, and they have a 40.
Yeah. I'm not sure. We need some confirmed deny. Chat room. Go.
Yeah, chat room should go work.
Google
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, go Google it.
Or go
But
into...
while they look out for that,
Yeah.
instead of just listing kind of the cool stuff that Symbiosis gives and people will receive from it, what do you think of the whole mechanic in general? Because I know Symbiosis was a really controversial and very strange thing to see enter the game back when they put it in. Didn't they put it in Cataclysm? I think
Just
I think
read 'em.
Cataclysm was
last,
when
it was last expansion, yeah.
last expansion. I mean, what do you think of this whole thing where you get a varied ability from somebody and you give a varied ability? Do you think it has a good or bad impact on class balance, or is it just kind of a neat flavor thing that Druids get?
It's overpowered and underpowered at the same time.
Okay,
What do you mean by
that's
that? Does it depend on your raid comp, you mean?
It
Yes.
is really good for raiding and PvP simply because you do get this new ability, and a lot of times in raiding to kill a boss, it takes the snowflake ability like from Megara. Solar beams are really good, and getting an extra one of those makes it, a lot more trivial. And also for a personal cooldown, being able to cloak through entire mechanics to where, like, say you have a debuff that you need to bring out of a raid, or debuff that has a big deal to do with the raid, you can cloak it off. And having more of that, like say you have 3 rogues, and now you have 2 Moonkins with cloak also, it makes
Right.
a big chunk of your raid able to immunity something.
Yeah.
Well, is
So
the problem
it
there
makes
with the
a
base
big
ability,
impact.
or is the problem the fact that Symbiosis can give it to another class?
It's more than it can give it to another class. So instead of only having 2 or 3 people in your raid that have something, now you have 5 people or 6 people. Now going from, say, like even Feral's getting Divine Shield and Resto's getting Ice Block. Now you have like half of your raid or 3/4 of your raid that can immunity something.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, especially on a fight like Lei Shen where you need X immunities to
exactly.
to get through a
Lei Shen, it was
specific
really big.
encounter.
Yeah. Just rest in peace, Death Knights, on that fight, though. Sorry, Death Knights. Nothing can help you. But that's interesting. You guys can really have a lot of utility with just that spell. I don't know how people are like, what do we stack up against? The question was against rogues and warlocks, and one spell almost has more utility than their whole toolkit.
Well, I mean, it does have a
probably
lot of
does have
utility. The
more.
problem is, does it have a problematic amount of utility?
True,
I mean,
true.
you could pick an ability or two out of a lot of classes. I mean, especially with mine, I could sit here and rant for a while about how Bubble's broken, but it's been in the game forever. I mean, it's just part of how my class works. So the question is whether Symbiosis is too overpowered or whether it's reasonably overpowered in comparison to what other classes get. So I think it's really cool. I think that they could tweak some of the abilities that are given and received.
Yeah.
Don't know if Roar, Roar is pretty strong. Getting Cloak of Shadows and Bubble is really strong in comparison to some other silly things.
There's
Solar
also some
Beam,
that are
especially
really
in challenge
useless.
modes. Yeah, there are
Oh,
some that are
yeah,
pretty
of course
worthless.
there are. I mean, I
Misdirect.
hey, all right. Sometimes the hunters
It's on the GCD, bro. I don't know if you can make it that much worse.
I used
I used
Misdirect
to-
once on my Moonkin, I think, and that was doing 10-man Heroic Empress for the ads that come out on the sides. That's it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, hey,
One-time use, yeah.
one-time use. That's like me with Solar Beam. I've used it twice. This entire
Yeah,
expansion.
it's some of those things is like I used to complain about getting Wrath, like, oh my god, Wrath is like the most worthless spell ever.
Yeah.
And my raid leader used to be like, man, I get Solar Beam, it's so dumb. And then of course challenge modes come out, and Solar Beam is kind of nice if you've got a Druid and an Ellie in your challenge mode group.
Yeah.
It's Solar Beam and Wrath are two of those things where either you're never gonna hit that button, or it's an integral part of your strat for that class to use that spell.
Yeah,
So.
it's not to have a really bad pun here, but it's almost the same thing as your Eclipse. That it has really strong, like it swings both ways, really strong one way and really weak another way. So, yeah, I was always
Well,
wondering
they
when
made it for PvP too.
Sure,
Like I
yeah.
have a joke running with Absalom, which is our prop paladin, and because it's symbiosis, they're both supposed to benefit each other. But I would just be kidding around. I would call him a parasite because he would give me Hand of Justice, which is the stun, but I would give him a tank cooldown.
Yeah.
I would just kind of
Yep.
laugh. Yeah,
Yep.
be like,
Yep.
I have no use for this ability.
One of the things that makes Symbiosis really strong too are those obscure spells like Mass Dispel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Master
Oh,
Spell.
Why do you
yeah,
have
I
to use
remember
Mass
using
Dispel?
that.
Oh, well, what
That's
about
true.
Wind Reaver Lord guy in Heart of Fear
Yep.
with the AoE buffs? You had a Boomkin that would never go and just Mass Dispel?
Yeah.
Just spam it
It's true.
every 15 seconds. And it really trivialized that fight for the most part. You literally just stack everything up that was alive and you just kept dispelling them.
Sure. Well, we already had one of these last topics here that we already talked about earlier. So then what about, how do you guys stack up against your other caster counterparts? So versus Mage, Warlock, Shadow Priest, and Elemental Shaman. Right now, we can talk about it, but then like an overall sense, how do you guys, just a DPS-wise, how do you guys see, because you guys both have really high
Yeah,
levels
over the
of play?
whole course of the expansion,
Yeah.
not just in the last. I mean, we all know what the answer to that is with regard to warlocks, but kind of
Well.
setting aside the little broken warlock situation that we've been over before.
Sure.
How did you guys feel?
Through the entire expansion, and even last expansion, we have a very big comparison with Shadow Priests, because they serve kind of the same niche before the Star Surge changes, where we'd multi-dot and we'd gain extra damage from multi-dotting,
Yeah.
and a lot of the Star Surges, I mean, we'd get more Star Surges from doing that. And I mean, a lot of that did change to where we're now like a lot stronger in terms of single target DPS near the end of this expansion compared to multiple target damage, but we're still very, very strong. But some of the other classes do pull ahead slightly.
Okay.
Slightly is the key word there. I think
Slightly, yeah.
as long as
Yeah,
it's
I
slightly,
mean, we're
that's
still
fine.
very, very competitive, but if you were going to go like pure numbers base, like, an Affliction Lock or a Shadow Priest might pull ahead, or very close and similar to Shadow Priest. So it's kind of like, proc based or RNG based, whether one's going to go more than the other.
Okay.
In terms of single target, though, if we focus purely on single target, because we kind of have to give up one or the other because our Star Surges are normalized in a sense. If we go pure single target, we are very close to rogues also, in a sense. So
Yeah. Okay.
we do
Well,
have the choice of being multi-target or single target.
I just wanted to make sure there was no
And-
huge disparity between any of those.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I think out of all the 5 actual casters, Elemental Shaman probably in the worst spot of all 5 of you. So, which is coming, by the way. If you're gonna be like, chat's gonna freak out. Well, when's the Elemental Shaman episode? It's like it's coming. All right, soon. TM. So, we'll talk to them when we get to that point. We'll see where they stack up everything. But, Cyous, what about you on that topic?
Well, we stack up very well in terms of DPS. As Zoomkins said, we have a lot of choices we can make. So we can do single target, we can do multi-target, and we have decent AoE. It's just not very compatible with Eclipse and Nature's Grace. That's the only downside to it. But it's not that bad. It just needs to be improved. But in terms of raw single target, we're really up there. RNG is RNG. You can't exactly force it, but if it's favorable, you're doing a lot, comparatively speaking. And
Okay.
multi-target and like 2 or 3 target fights, we're not an Affliction Warlock because Soul Swap is awkward. But, we're up there.
Okay.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's good to hear. I know that we have always had a Moonkin in the raid, and I know they were doing when there was the multi-dot tier. Was it T15? Was the
Yeah, Throne of
multi-dot
Thunder.
tier?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you guys were doing pretty well. But I've been pretty positive about balance for most of this expansion, with some hilariously glaring exceptions. But as long as I haven't really seen a big reason to sit pretty much any class, at least at the level that we're doing content. I know things are a little bit different up at the world first level and the world top 10 level where you guys raid. But it's as long as, we'll talk about how X class is better than Y class, but pretty much everybody's doing okay at this point, especially if you feel like you can compete on single target and AoE most of the time.
Yeah, It sounds, I don't want to pick on my elemental shaman friends, but I really don't know other class right now that really has a really big issue for, like, we're talking about like patchwork-esque fights where single target damage really matters. Is that elemental shaman might be the only one that really in a big pickle right now.
The problem is that, like, even though maybe single target damage, they're not amazing.
Sure.
Like, once you add like a couple adds in a fight, that's their strongest. Like, chain lightning is ridiculous. So, I mean, a lot of times you want to make sure that you do have one or two, like, in your rating composition, because, I mean, when we did Darumu and the Ice Walls came out, it was Ellie Shaman. We even got, like, Ult Ellie Shaman to come in.
We did the exact same thing. He was in, like, tier 14 gear, like, terrible, awful gear, but he, like, outdamaged main raiders because chain lightning is broken. Or lava beam, yeah. Nope, absolutely. Yep. So,
and it's, I mean, for developers, it's finding that
yeah.
kind of balance to make them not too strong in that sense, and not just buff them in one sense so they're good at two different things at the same time, or better.
Well, yeah, it's a weird trade-off, because we've talked to my shaman friends a lot about how we have three things we can do. We can either AoE, single target, or heal, because we're like a hybrid. And enhancement can kind of do all three now, sort of, because they buff Fire Nova, but our AoE is still kind of meh. But then they AoE and damage, but they can't heal, whereas we can damage and heal. So it's weird that the three prongs don't add up to all three on both of our specs. So, which we'll go into more later. I don't think anyone else is that in your caster group, though. Everyone does a pretty good job right now. I think Shadow Priests complain a lot, but they have so much.
A little.
They have so much utility though right now. I mean, they rank up really well with you guys, because what does a mage bring?
Damage.
Well, that's
damage.
We're talking, is that it? They not die a lot with Ice Block, I guess, or Cauterize, but that's when we're comparing utility here. This list for Boomkins is
utility, I hate that word. Oh my gosh.
Right?
Yeah. They have
but
Bloodlust.
No, they shouldn't bring utility.
Yeah,
they do bring Bloodlust. And they bring Ice Block. I mean,
Mana Cakes,
and they bring Ring of Frost. I mean, they bring stuff.
Yeah.
So.
No,
the mage in my guild just says nothing. LOL, we bring nothing.
Is that what he said right now? We bring nothing.
Every class needs to bring at least 5 bullet points worth of utility on final boss notes. Yes.
What mages need is like a
everybody should have a raid cooldown. Everybody should have a raid DPS cooldown. Maybe they should all be the same so that everybody just brings everything.
Hey, then we'll be playing another game that I'm not going to mention because I don't want to make enemies of people. But the game that doesn't have the Trinity anymore, that game's weird.
What if mages brought tradable mana gems?
I don't know about that.
That's a different topic, though.
I don't know about that.
Well, let's move along just a little bit. I know you talked a little earlier about how your playstyle changed a bit with gear and how you felt a bit frustrated at the beginning of the expansion when you didn't have a whole lot of gear in Tier 14. You said that the change was that you got more Star Surge procs as your gear level increased? Talk a little bit about how your gear changed the way that you play.
Sure. With low gear levels, you don't have very much crit. Go figure. And at the high end levels, you have a lot of crit. Upwards of 65% active crit with trinkets rolling and stuff like that. So when you go up from like 20% to 65%, there's going to be some playstyle changes when you play an RNG-based spec.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
well, a spec that has procs based on crits.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, RNG on top of RNG. So you're playing the lottery every time. So at Tier 14 levels, it was mostly focused on getting your haste breakpoint and then just stacking crit, because it was all about going back and forward between lunar and solar eclipses. You weren't really focusing too much on crit until you actually started gearing up towards Heart of Fear and Tears of the Spring, because that's when your gear could actually support it. And before then, you were just kind of SOL, because you were just hardcasting most of the time, and you might get you might get 2 procs per Eclipse phase, compared to now, which is 3, 4, even 5.
Wow. Per Eclipse. So how fast do you feel that with your gear level right now that you transition between lunar and solar eclipses, like on average? Like how many seconds are we talking here? Like between
right now, going from lunar back to lunar is about 28, 32 seconds.
A round trip. Wow.
Okay.
That's a round trip, yes. And in tier 14 levels, that was up towards like 38 and 40.
It's almost double the time.
See, this whole feeling of a class with procs that change based on your crit level is a little bit strange to me, because Rets don't have any procs based on crit. We have procs based on certain spells that we cast. Like we have my 4-piece procs based on Holy Power finishers, and if you respect Divine Purpose, that procs based on specific spells in the rotation. But none of it's based on crit. The only way that my gear changes my playstyle is it gets faster as my haste level rises, and that's it. That's all. My rotation just gets faster. So this idea of a class where as you get more crit, you get more procs, then that's a little bit new to me, which is kind of why I asked, because you had been talking about it before. So that goes into a little bit of how your playstyle changes with gear.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you ended up with too much crit, like just too much secondary stats at the end of the expansion? I know that's been kind of a consistent problem.
That's why they kind of came out with the changes to shooting stars. They kind of normalized it to split the percentage you gain per mob that you put it. So I'd put a Moonfire on one target. I have my shooting stars proc percentage. I put it on another target. It would split between those 2 targets. So they kind of changed it from the previous tier because we had so much crit. So if we had, say, like a 30% on 3 different targets, we'd be star surging like every GCD. Compared to now, Cyous even has an entire spreadsheet for it that I'm pretty sure he would want to go into. But they definitely reduced our proc chances for this tier and made it a little more simpler and kind of like, I don't know, slowed down our damage, because we were hitting kind of like critical masses of crit rating at that point.
Yeah.
To where we were only pushing like a couple buttons and not even using our filler.
Yeah, which we go into that, like the Zoom said, we have an awesome spreadsheet up here. And we'll get to that in a little bit when we talk about how crazy Star Surge used to be and how it is now. But still, overall, how it is, look what Anna said, it is almost a cascading waterfall that gets bigger and bigger and bigger over the course of the expansion, whereas at the start of it, it's like kind of now and then. But now it's like every other GCD almost, you guys talking about, like 4 or 5 every rotation. That's a lot. So do you think that's a good mechanic, that you scale off of that crit RNG lottery so much, or is it kind of obnoxious?
It's a little obnoxious.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the difference between me and someone else, like I'm reaching, 580 item level here. The amount of Star Search procs I get compared to someone who's just like 540 or just getting into, this tier of rating is ridiculous. Like the disparity is huge. Even in Cataclysm, it was just based on a proc or a base percentage, and now that it's, completely gear based, it's balanced for kind of like the high end in a sense, but for the low end, it's you'd barely see Star Surges at all. Yeah. So it's like you play a whole completely different game.
A good example is to look at challenge modes. Have you ever seen a Boomkin in challenge modes? Now nerf their Star Surge proc rate by almost quadruple what you're expecting. They're just non-existent. And when I was doing challenge modes recently, people are pulling 120k DPS, and I'm sitting over here 60k, no problem, bro.
No problem.
You're doing good.
I'm doing wrath damage. It's okay. We're all right here.
I'm tossing out rejuves.
Yeah. I know that Boomkins were strong at the start of challenge mode, though. They were really good because their AoEing and off healing, that was the 5 DPS runs where you had like the tank and DPS gear and then 4 DPS, and your Boomkin would just heal and DPS. But I don't know how challenge modes have like evolved over
when
the
you
tiers, but
dot everything, and
Yeah.
your damage is based on just casting Healing Touch and using your Star Surge procs, as you're putting it, yeah. But
Not
when you
anymore.
have super low crit, like 15% low, which is really low, because we're balanced around like 50% crit now,
Yeah.
you're struggling just to do anything, quite frankly.
Yeah. So then, to turn this back on you guys, hot seat time, what do you think could fix this? Or do you have any options or thoughts about how this could be fixed in 6.0?
Make shooting stars scale with mastery instead of a flat percentage of 30%.
And how would they scale with mastery? Like chances off of your dots, not off crits.
It'll be
though?
the same thing
Or-
now. It's just a different formula that has a more. It has a baseline value. Let's just say 10% for simplicity, and then when you get more gear, your proc rate goes up along with your crit. So you're going to get that cascading effect where you're eventually going to come back up to ridiculous numbers. But if you balance it as such where the scaling isn't so high, it's not going to be that bad. It's not going to be like tier 16 pre-nerf levels.
And it'll help you out at lower gear levels too, because you have a base amount.
Exactly.
That okay. Interesting. I'd like to put you guys just in the spot, because you never know what's going to happen in 6.0. But what about you, Zoom? You think the same thing? Fix student starts with mastery or something else?
I mean, I don't have like a fix per se to
Yeah,
it,
okay.
but the problem with the rating, I just think, is that like there is such a gigantic disparity to where they kind of had to band-aid it halfway between, like having it scale with gear like that
Yeah.
makes it completely different from start to finish. It's not like in Cataclysm it was pretty much the same because it was just a percentage on dot tick. Now it's a chance on dot crit, so not only does the dot have to crit, but it's a chance on that crit.
Yeah.
And that just
I mean, you have to wonder if the problem is not the mechanic, but just the insane levels of secondary stats that you get by the end of the expansion. I mean, if you had ended with half as many secondary stats as we have now, then there would be a much smaller change between, starter gear in T14 and best in slot gear in T16. So that's, I mean, I don't know, maybe they have to do that because they have to have all those different incremental levels of gear for all of the different reward levels that you need to get in order to feel a visceral difference between tiers. And I knew they did pretty big eye level jumps between tiers, and I don't disagree with that because I know why they did it. I felt the difference when I was testing on PTR, and they have to make those bosses interesting for all different levels of raiders. But in the end, you end up with these just absurd levels of secondary stats that we have by the end of the expansion, and they have to band-aid spells, like not just for Moonkins, but for everybody to fix that kind of thing. So you have to wonder if there's a medium solution somewhere.
Yeah, I mean,
the item level jump this tier has been, or this expansion has been the largest it's ever been. So it's kind of like a new experience for them as well as us.
True. And now they're reverting that to some degree with the item squish, so they'll have to, when they have the analytics and they just change the numbers, take off some zeros, but to make sure.
But they're not really reverting it. They're not really reverting it at all because all they're doing is just squishing all of the items down.
Yeah.
But there could be the same level of change from the beginning of tier 17 to the end of tier 20.
Yeah.
It's just going to be with the. You have to wonder if the percentages are going to be any different in terms of haste and crit and mastery. I don't know. I mean, the numbers might be smaller, but it might be just as big of a change. And I know why they did it, because they had to make each successive tier drop a much higher eye level of gear, and that was to keep those bosses not completely trivial for the top end, while still making them interesting for the more casual players who are picking up gear as huge upgrades in these raids as the weeks progress. And so it worked really well, but it makes this kind of ridiculous situation that we're in at the end of the tier where I could be at like 50% haste, and that's silly.
Yeah.
It's just very silly.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, I've been preaching 6.0 being probably some of the most balanced gameplay we're going to see in a long time, at least from the raiding scene. So it'll be fun to see when we finally get there. But there's a lot of stuff that's up in the air right now too. But when we get beta, hopefully in a couple of months here, and then we'll all be able to help the devs out with everything you guys have within your power. I know that's what you said too in the meet and greet, Cyous, right? You're waiting for that 6 months of beta, right? Just to dig in. Yep. So it'll be fun to see. But anything else on those notes before we move on?
No, not that I can think
Nope.
of.
I think we're good?
Nope. I think we're good to move on.
All right. Well, I'm going to take a quick... Oh, what, Anna?
Babe, while you do the commercial break, I'm probably going to restart my PC to see if I can fix this 8-bit thing.
Okay. That's fine. Alrighty. I want to take a quick moment to real quick tell you guys about some other communities that you might not have heard of that help us out and that help you guys all out by being just damn awesome. If they'll load here... Hang on a second. Yeah, we did it. Okay. So, first and foremost, if you guys do not know about manaflask.com, you should. Because we're talking about crazy amounts of stuff today, and actually, I just refreshed the page right now, and Suni's got a healing guide up. There is almost like a blog post. This is Suni from Method about, it's pretty funny. It's almost like a blog post talking about healing right now, going into MOP, and all this other stuff. So it's pretty nice. I'm going to check that out. They also do a lot of community articles. They have different types of posts. We're up here. They cover different stuff going on with Item Squish and Flex and WOD, stuff like that. They also have English and German streams. They also have the VOD section down here, too. They have their own little show that they run as well. They did have a interview with Vodka when they were coming back to the game. So if you're interested in a whole lot more community-oriented stuff and you want to dig into some more World of Warcraft, you can go check out manaflask.com for a great resource on that. And then we're talking about Druids today. But if you want more Druids, you can go over to teamwafflecast.com for the Team Waffle podcast. It's a Druid podcast by Druids for Druids. And they are... How many episodes are you guys up to right now? They have the Rest of Roundtable they just did. 64 episodes. So you got some Druid stuff to listen to. These guys are pretty awesome. You go check them out over there. That's all Druids all the time on their show. And then if you need even more Druids, you can go over the Inconspicuous Bear. Now, the Inconspicuous Bear is mostly a bear tanking side. They have the Team Waffle podcast right here as well, too. And they have the bear tanking guide, the Tier 16 BIS. So if you have other specs of Druid that you dabble in sometimes, you have some questions about, spreadsheets, breakdowns, calculators, SimCraft, all this good stuff right here, you can go check out theinkbear.com for all of that. So between Team Waffle and the Ink Bear, I think you guys should be satisfied with all of your Druid needs. There's tons of stuff out there for them. And those are two awesome little places that you guys can find even more about Druids. So, I also wanted to update you guys real quick on, we just had the December donation drive with the Firelord and the t-shirts and the wristbands and all that good stuff. But we had some amazing donators. Thank you all so much for your generosity in helping us get to nearly our goal. I think we tipped over our goal with my grandparents, but that's fine. I wanted to let you know that the wristbands and the t-shirts are going to be going out toward the end of this month. I'm waiting for all the money and the donations to clear out of the system so that they're all okay. And then when I get all that stuff organized, the custom t-shirt people that are secured a t-shirt, I will be emailing them to make sure that they have what they want, name-wise. And then I'll also be emailing out the wristbands, which you're probably going to get more than it says on the actual loot list, depending on how much you give us, just because we have lots anyway. And I think I'm going to keep the wristband donation thing forever once I re-get the donation drive up. That if you donate at least a certain amount, then you'll just get wristbands anyway, just because we have lots of them. If you want some, that's fine. But there'll be no actual amounts to get them like we were for the donation drive. So we will be doing all that, and all the upgrades for the show will probably come around in February. We're going to be up. Anna and I are going to get upgrades, audio and video stuff, and that'll be a lot of fun for you guys. The technology to make a better show for you was the whole point of that drive. So thank you all again for your generosity. And I'm waiting for Anna to get set up over here before we kick back over to the show and get into the mathy topic for the last half hour. So, we have one more major question that came in. Again, for questions, if you guys have questions for the classes that are coming up, just go over to FinalBoss.tv. We have an Ask a Boss section. The link is also down below, right there. You can put them right there. You can also send them in to us on Twitter during the show, and during each after show, we'll get to them in the after show as well. But if you just tweet at FinalBossTV, I have the app pulled up. We'll get to those in the after show. So, yeah. And waiting for Anna. She's all set, though. It kind of ended toward the end there. She wasn't 8-bit anymore. I was kind of sad. I was enjoying that. But she will be right back. But I wanted to open this up. I'll start off with the first question that kind of coincides with this big topic here, and then I'll kick it over to Cyous. We have... There it is. This comes in from it's a Lion Thor on EU Kazakh asks, when it comes to some boss fights, I've seen Moonkins reforging more mastery, where the majority have gone for more crit. In the current content, with Siege of Orgrimmar Heroic, where is mastery better than crit? He also name drops my favorite druids, Zoomkins and Pactek. Is it Pacte? Pacte? Do you know Zoom? I don't know how to pronounce his name, but they reforge totally different from each other. So I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on mastery versus crit right now. Are you there? Hello? Oh.
Zoomkins?
Yeah.
Zoomkins, you want to take that?
Yeah, sorry. Oh, you're muted, sir.
He's muted.
He's muted.
He's
No.
muted.
Okay.
There
Hi.
we go.
Yes, I'll take it. Okay. So I think at the higher gear levels now in Siege of Orgrimmar Heroic, I mean, you are getting massive amounts of crit like we talked about before with Star Search procs and whatnot.
Yeah.
So there's a certain point where you're getting more Star Search procs than you can really use effectively, to where you're getting them, you know, every other GCD, whatnot. So to alleviate some of that RNG, some people, like I've messed around with, because of the Purified Binding from Immersius, it's a trinket that gives you extra mastery percentage as well as crit damage and whatnot. So per point that you're getting a mastery, you're getting a little bit of extra damage because it's increasing the rating by, like mine's like 9%.
Okay.
So I've taken a little bit of the RNG out of the crit rating and put a little bit into the mastery, because I've also experimented with like full mastery builds, which that person might be questioning too. Like a few weeks ago, I had just went like a full mastery build with like only like 10k crit rating, but you know, I changed that and I'm back up to like 13 or 14k crit rating, and then a little bit more into mastery. And it just alleviates some of the RNG of the Star Search procs.
Okay.
That's it. So you have more consistent damage in that sense.
So then right now, what would you say is the better way to go?
I mean, you should definitely focus on crit rating, but some people that are getting high up to say like 18k or 19k crit rating, that might be a little excessive. You're reaching, you know, like above 50%, you know, crit rates.
Okay.
Like Cyous can also talk about the math on that with like the Star Surge wastage.
Yeah.
And Star Surge procs that you're getting.
Yeah. Go for it.
So to add on to that, the Star Surge wastage that Zoomkins was talking about, that's basically when you get so many Star Surge procs, or you just don't use Star Surge procs quickly enough, and you just keep overlapping procs. So it's basically when your shooting stars refreshes itself. And that's essentially a wasted proc. You don't get that damage back.
Yep.
So when you have 19,000 crit, which is something like 45% base or something like that, something crazy, you're going to have a lot of overlapping procs. And at that point, are you getting so many procs that you're not able to use them all? If so, you start cutting down on the crit, and you can go into more mastery, which is more guaranteed damage. And that's why you see some people reforging more mastery. Like at 16,000 crit, you'll see people with like 10,000 mastery or something like that. That's the only reason why they'll reforge differently. It's more of a playstyle preference. Do you want to have an infinite amount of Star Search procs, or do you want to have maybe a couple fewer Star Search procs, but more damage? That's all.
Okay. So it's not, there's no is-all be-all though, right? But you don't want to swing entirely in one direction, I guess you should say. You want to keep them in some balance.
Until a certain point, it's mostly crit.
Okay, until a certain point, it's certainly crit, and then you just even it. Okay. Fair enough.
Once you have an excess of ratings to where you have already a high crit rate, like percentage.
Yeah.
I guess more better way to put it.
Okay. Not bad. And then the topic that leads us into is, we talked a little bit about this in the yesterday, but I want to briefly touch over how complex or simple the balanced rotation is, because we've kind of dug into it a lot tonight. But then, what is it for you guys? We actually had a question that just come in about maximizing DPS, and that coincides quite well with this one. So what does it take for you to DPS effectively and maximize your damage, right?
You talked a little bit about planning around
Yeah.
eclipses. So yeah, let's hear a little more about that.
So when you go back and forward between Eclipse, you want to keep Nature's Grace up as much as possible. Like 95% at this gear level is good. You can easily hit 100% if it's single target, but it's not a big deal if you don't have that. But you want to go back and forth between Eclipse as quickly as possible, and that typically refers to refreshing your dots correctly and refreshing with trinket procs correctly, so you get more Star Search procs. And the more Star Search procs, the faster you go.
Yeah.
So at this level, it's pretty much keep up Nature's Grace as much as possible. Hit Eclipse, dot up everything you can, and go.
Okay. Fair enough. Zoom, anything?
I mean, no, he's pretty accurate in that sense. I don't really have too much to add.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of the times you're trying to make sure you're not sitting in an eclipse for too long so that you do have high uptimes of Nature's Grace. Because even though it might be conducive to sit in Solar and Hurricane and get that extra Hurricane damage, you're also you're losing Nature's Grace, which is going to make it a lot slower to get to the next eclipse. So you're kind of doing a little bit of damage now to give up damage later, in a sense.
Yeah. Alrighty. I just want to make sure we have that rounded out before we get into this giant Excel spreadsheet here that I know Cyous just can't wait to bring up on the show.
It's not that big.
Well, I mean, the screen is going to look big, but I'm saying it's pretty
Fair
awesome.
enough.
I don't even know how to make Excel spreadsheets. I don't even know what kind of math you have down behind all this, but it's pretty awesome. So
a
How
lot
do
of
you
ones and
not know
zeros.
how to make Excel spreadsheets?
hey, all right. I don't need to worry
He lets
about
other
that.
people do it for him.
I ain't got no time for that. Yeah. So I'll just bring up this real quick then. We were talking about shooting stars being a pretty integral part of everything balance. So I'll switch over to this thing, and then you can walk us through what we're looking at here, Cyous.
Sure. Okay. Well, when you bring it up, just say, because I can't see your screen,
No,
unfortunately.
you're fine. Yep, go for it. It's up
All
right
right.
now.
So this is a Excel spreadsheet, which basically shows you everything you would possibly want to know about Star Surge and shooting stars. And for the most part, it's all done for you. You just have to change a couple values based on your gear and what you actually want to look at. So if we go to num targets, we can change it from 1 to 14 because you can only cast Moonfire or Sunfire 14 times before it starts falling off. And you could just do a ×2 if you want to go higher when you have a celestial alignment up. So it's no biggie. But change the number of targets that you want, and it'll tell you effectively what you have there. And you can change the number of ticks. So if you go to haste info, you can see what your ticks would be at. So let's just say we have Nature's Grace in the meta proc up, so we can change the number of ticks per dot to 12, for example.
Yeah, not 1,112, but 12. Okay, got it.
12, okay. Then for a crit chance, let's just use a fairly round number of 50.
Yep.
So 50% crit chance, we have all this information based on it, and it tells us, okay, what are we expecting? What should we look for? And how many GCDs essentially do you think we're going to be using? That's not shown, but you can see how many Star Search procs you should anticipate for your gear level. And when we start going up to more targets and different numbers of active Moonfires and Sunfires, we can easily see that the numbers are going up, but not nearly as much as they used to. And this spreadsheet is meant to show you what you're supposed to be expecting with these awkward numbers, essentially.
Sure.
The effective proc rate on shooting stars is the square root of the number of targets divided by the number of targets. The number of Moonfires divided by the number of Moonfires, then based on proc rate. So
Oof, math.
if you...
Math.
Yeah.
It's hard to do square root numbers in your head.
Sure.
Long story short, very few people can do it. So this spreadsheet just shows you, okay, it's this much. And if we go to the post-nerf values towards the bottom, we can just use the numbers we have from up top, and we can go, okay, we have 1 active Moonfire and 4 active Sunfires. It shows you the proc rates. It shows you the procs you should be expecting based on your stats and the number of ticks. It shows you how long it's going to take and the duration in the purple bar.
Yeah.
And it tells you the relative procs per second. And a GCD is essentially 1 second for us. So a proc a second with Moonfire, you're going to have 0.257 procs with no 4-piece set bonus. So you add up the number of Sunfires, you have your... Okay. Everything is there. It's essentially slightly less than 1 proc per second.
Yeah.
So basically, every other GCD, you're going to be using a Star Search with this setup. It's RNG is RNG. You can't guarantee anything, but
Sure.
this just shows you the effective values. That's all.
Yep.
And it's pretty straightforward.
And you said
Almost right there.
you've put in a lot of work into the spreadsheet, that you've actually tested it out, like a lot of it, like in game, comparing to like, let's say, Warcraft logs or World of Logs or whatever. And have you seen really close together like numbers?
RNG is RNG, of course, and
Sure.
you can't guarantee anything, yada, yada, yada. You have to say that disclaimer. But for the most part,
Yeah.
when I had, I put it up to 75% crit rating, and that's how much one of our Moonfires had at the time for his cooldowns running. It actually lined up pretty well. I was only off by 1 Star Search.
Oh,
And, RNG being RNG, I'll accept it.
sure. That's awesome. Well, to preface the end of this out too, is this going to be available for all of your loving Moonkins that would like to have this spreadsheet? I know we talked about it a
If
little bit yesterday.
the proc rate does not change in Warlords, yes. But if it's going to change, there's almost no point of making it public, mostly because it's going to be obsolete in a couple months.
Sure.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
they'll get that fixed though.
Well,
But
they'll fix Star Search with their own ways, but
sure.
whatever they do, I'll have to make a new spreadsheet for it. So if it turns out nothing's going to change, I can make it available, and if people want, I can upload it. It's no big deal. I don't mind sharing.
Sure. Yep. And we'll get to
You
where
should.
you can.
I'm saying you should upload it. Pretty
Yeah.
sure people
Should
would look at it.
Should upload
Yeah.
it.
Well,
Yep. Yep. And I'll give out your Twitter here a little bit too, so people can go grab it from your Twitter. You posted on there.
Sure.
So, and the next little bit I wanted to get into your DPS talents and how we stack up. We talked a little bit about them earlier, but let's break down, because in both of these talents you had like a yay nay towards certain ones. So we'll start off with Soul of the Forest versus Incarnation, and then Force of Nature. And I'll throw this over to Zoom first. So random proc versus 3-minute cooldown for Summon Pet. Which is yay or nay? And why
Okay,
for those?
so kind of like we explained before when we were talking, technically on paper they're pretty similar in a sense, but it's the fights that make one ability better than the other.
Okay.
Like how you use them in a fight and how effective they are. So Soul of the Forest is, it's okay, but the problem is that it procs mainly off your Wrath Starfires, like your direct casts. And a lot of times in fights that have ads or multi-targets, you're dotting for majority of the time. So you're dotting and star surging. So you have a lot lower of a chance to proc it than what it has there on paper, because you're not. But on single target, it would be a little bit higher. But instead of going through all that trouble, you could just pick up Incarnation, and you can time Incarnation, which works fluidly and perfectly with Celestial Alignment, which is baseline. So that's one of the big issues, I guess, or one of the things that kind of make one more attractive than the other. So it's more or less the fact that you have Celestial Alignment, which is a 3-minute cooldown that puts you in an Eclipse, that works so well with Incarnation, that makes Incarnation really nice.
Yeah.
Force of Nature has its AI issues as well. They changed it to where it's a little bit better than previously, where it was a 1-minute cooldown and you'd summon 3 trees and they'd have at it and they would snapshot stats.
Yeah.
Now they update stats dynamically, and you have them charge as kind of like Hand of Gul'dan or something like that. The only issue is that sometimes the AI, if the target dies, they won't swap targets quickly. Sometimes they might run around and follow you before they start casting, so you lose like 2 or 3 casts, because they're only up for 15 seconds, and their cast time is determined by your haste and your int procs. So it's a little bit more dynamic and complex to play Force of Nature, only because the RPPM trinkets are unpredictable. So you're kind of trying to use them when you get RPPM trinket procs and meta procs, stuff like that, when they would be the most useful. And it's a lot easier to use one cooldown, like Incarnation, when you have all of those procs up, for those 30 seconds, or at least
Sure.
the majority of the time of it, than it is to try and gauge that all the way through a fight.
Okay.
Even though, Force of Nature is still really good in single target.
Fair enough. So not as much volatility last night when I asked you about this. So all 3 are sort of all in the same boat, though? You could really find a place for all 3 of them?
Yeah, like I said before, Soul of the Forest, I've actually messed around with it in Spoils of Pandaria. The Spoils.
Yeah.
And it worked out pretty well there because there isn't really an instance where a target is up for, say, like 15 seconds long for a full treant to go in their AI with target switching.
Oh,
They
okay,
get kind of
okay.
confused sometimes. And using Incarnation, sure, you can use it once every 3 minutes to blow up a few ads, but it's not, it's not there the entire fight or
Yeah.
staying with you the entire fight.
All right.
Like that sort of damage boost.
It's pretty
Okay.
unusual though, where you get a fight where you have that many targets that are surviving for that small of an amount of time.
Yeah.
But like I said before, the talents themselves are all pretty good, but it's the fights that are designed, that make one better than the other.
Okay.
Do you find yourself switching your talents up a whole lot within? Well, I mean, obviously not anymore because you guys are on like Wayfarm. But when you were progressing, did you find yourself switching your talents up a whole lot when you were still going through the beginning of the instance, and some fights were still moderately difficult?
Yeah, I did play around a lot with Incarnation and Force of Nature. I didn't really try Soul of the Forest a lot, but in that DPS tier, because it's more or less like you have this huge cooldown every 3 minutes, but that's awesome. All of a sudden, there's a different phase you have to push right after. You
Yeah.
don't have an extra damage boost. So even though Force of Nature might be a little less overall, when you're trying to kill a fight on progression, you're trying to push through certain hard parts of a fight where you
Yeah.
can really save up for that damage boost.
Okay.
So I did kind of like swap up with those here and there.
Well,
Yeah,
alrighty.
controlled burst DPS is usually where it's at when you're
Yeah.
trying to get through most
Yeah, it
fights where you're progressing.
Yeah, it's dependent whether you want it every 3 minutes or you want it,
Yeah.
a lot more often.
Yep. That sounds good. And anything on those 3 talents, Cyous? Or I was going to give you the next 3. So,
I'll continue to add on to Force of Nature and Incarnation. I don't
Yeah.
really have anything to say about Soul of the Forest. It's just kind of there and it happens. It's situational at best, like everything else in this game. But for Incarnation, it also depends on how long the fight lasts. Like if you, like on Farm, for example, if a fight lasts 3 minutes, you're going to have 1 usage of Incarnation. You're going to use it on the opener, of course. And Incarnation is stronger than Force of Nature simply because the fight duration is shorter. So things like the duration of a mechanic, for example, Incarnation was really good on Empress in Tier 14 because you had all these ads up for a very long time, so you could demolish them with Incarnation and Celestial Alignment. And if Force of Nature was like it was today back then,
yeah.
if you were trying to push the last phase and you didn't need the damage in the ad phase, you might take Force of Nature specifically to help push that final phase. So you
Okay,
have to consider
okay.
the fight mechanics themselves, as Zoomkins touched on, but it really comes into play when you're trying to min-max the overall fight based on what your guild needs. If you don't need AoE, Force of Nature. If you need more multi-dotting and cleaving, Incarnation is probably going to beat out treants who attack one target and like to sit around doing nothing.
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, with Force of Nature, it's a summon pet that attacks one thing. So that's really... Why would you take that in an AoE-oriented fight? That's pretty much... It seems pretty cut and dry to me. So
Another example of Force of Nature being really good, but at the same time kind of meh, is Raw Den, because the orbs would come out and you would dump your treants into them.
yeah. Okay.
They would, when the orb died, they would sit there and look at you like, hey, bro, what do I do next?
Oh, yeah?
And while you're tunneling Raw Den.
They wouldn't actually change targets? That sounds like how...
Oh, they
wolves
change
attack.
targets, they would start
Okay.
casting, then they despawn because their timer's over.
Of course. So...
But
all right, then.
it's specifically fight-based, and if you don't consider the fight and you just only lean towards Incarnation because you like it more, you're not really going to be optimizing yourself for the raid. You're just kind of being a
Okay.
little selfish and kind of lazy at the same time.
Oh, shots fired. Not a big deal.
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, there are times when you can be lazy. Those times are just not progression, though.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's fine. You guys have been lazy now for how many months? So it's okay.
Oh yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I'm
Just a
pretty
couple.
lazy sometimes. I know like Galacrest, like I don't even know what to really do on that fight. I kill a grunt on the side, and now that we have so much excess of damage where we're like waiting in between waves,
Yep.
like AoE sometimes, maybe dot, I'm definitely lazy on some fights though, for sure.
No, totally understood. So then the next 3 then, your final TPS tier, your DPS tier, not TPS, terrible. DPS tier of talents is going to be Heart of the Wild versus Dream of Cenarius versus Nature's Vigil. Now, we talked about Dream of Cenarius a lot earlier today in the show, so if you missed that, you have to watch the VOD. It'll be on YouTube. But, so you have a 6-minute cross-spec cooldown plus a passive. Then you've got the healing synergy bonus damage. And then you've got a 1.5 second cooldown that healing equals damage and damage also equals healing. So, this one has a little bit of implications where you don't have to touch on Dream of Cenarius too much, but what about the other 2 talents? I'll throw it to Cyous first.
So I'll start with Nature's Vigil.
Okay.
Nature's Vigil isn't too strong in 25-man, mostly because it only affects one target with the healing effect. And we're just going to consider the heal effect for now because we focus on the utility of it. For Heart of the Wild, it's mostly utility, that's why you take it. And the nice stat boost. But for Nature's Vigil, it lines up really well with Incarnation and any phases with multiple adds, and you're also helping your healers a little bit more, because who doesn't like smart healing?
Sure.
So with Nature's Vigil, you just press it and you get a nice little damage boost, and you start healing a couple people in the raid every now and then. And if you have it with cooldowns up, you do a lot of healing, probably a couple million per cooldown phase. Or no, sorry, more like 1 million per cooldown phase, but it's all smart healing. It's almost never overheal.
Sure.
And just to finish up on Nature's Vigil, it's really strong in 10-mans, because when you hit something for, let's just say 1 million, because that's a nice round number, that's a 250k heal. And a 250k heal is a smart heal, and it's probably going to go to the tank. So essentially, you can solo heal the tank with Nature's Vigil for 30 seconds.
To some degree, yeah. That sounds really strong for 10-man, definitely. But
and that it only comes down to a numbers game, because 25 is smaller than, or 25 is larger than 10, and if you only have one target, Nature's Vigil is stronger with the smaller environment.
Okay, fair enough. What about you, Zoom?
Yeah, like we kind of touched base before. The last tier, of course, it gives you a damage boost, but a lot of times you focus more on the utility of it. Heart of the Wild we use regularly in our guild, like Blood Legion, for Heart of the Wild Tranks, because we use them as raid cooldowns. So in between like healer cooldowns or smoke bombs, we use these as kind of like a filler as well, so that the other ones have time to come back up. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I can pretty much save an entire raid if something's going wrong with Heart of the Wild Trank. I've mentioned before, it's, as strong as a Resto Trank, if not stronger, like especially if you have procs going on randomly at that time. But all you do is you can have Heart of the Wild macro to your Trank, and it pretty much keeps the raid sitting at 100% for the entire time it's being channeled. It's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, no, Boomkin Trank is pretty strong. I think we definitely value Boomkin's Trank. Is Feral Trank the same though with Heart of the Wild, or no? It's still a little. It's about the same.
It is if they use Heart of the Wild, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Because I think that we always really put value on Boomkin Trank being like its own cooldown, but if they don't have Heart of the Wild, they're like coupled with something else to really make it work. But yeah,
I know in Throne of the Thunder, me, Bush, we would use Nature's Vigil kind of like in a sense of utility like that, where we would chain them.
Sure.
Because it was 30 seconds, it's a 1.5 minute cooldown. If we had 3 Moonkin, if we had like Akrol who had quit for school and whatnot, we would have been chaining like permanent Nature's Vigil up. Even though it's like it was a slight DPS loss, it would be constant smart healing throughout the raid the entire duration of the fight.
Okay.
But that's some things to consider also.
Yeah, those two.
That's if you need it though.
Sure. That's similar to how shamans work, because we usually run 1 elemental and 2 enhancement, and we kind of like layer on our AGs or healing totems, where we have like 1, and then it rolls into the next. So that's similar to how we'd also do the triage. But that's interesting how your cooldowns are similar in that regard too. Yeah. Okay. And then, I don't know, Cyous, anything else on those last 3?
Sure, I'll touch up on Dream of Cenarius now that it's a different version from what we were talking about earlier.
It is.
Dream of Cenarius now gives you a flat 25% damage boost when you healing touch, then enter an Eclipse. You get basically 25% additional mastery. So it's not too strong in the playstyle of today. If you just want to cast healing touch before an Eclipse or before a fight, it's really, really good burst with Incarnation, but it's not really a play style that most people prefer. Most people just kind of want to spam their buttons and do damage. They don't really want to heal while they're doing damage.
Okay.
Which is understandable.
Yeah, God forbid you do anything other than make numbers.
Yeah.
That really is how
They
most
don't
people
like the
feel,
green
though.
numbers.
You're right.
Sometimes, yeah.
People don't like pushing buttons that don't make damage. That's why people don't like maintenance buffs. That's why people don't like anything that doesn't hit the mob. No, I agree.
Nope, I totally understand.
It's just a playstyle preference at best. But for, lower gear levels, like challenge modes and stuff, it's balanced around, Siege of Orgrimmar gear. So it's really strong.
Fair enough. Yep. So, the last little bit here before we get out of here is going to be a soapbox time for you two. I know we've talked about a lot of things during all the show, but do you guys have any closing tips or tricks, hints, secrets, lesser-known facts, little hidden gems of the Boomkins spec to impart upon your community?
Mm-hmm.
No? Well, oh, there he goes.
Not really entirely sure if I have anything to soapbox about. I know that I've complained a bunch of times, and everyone has, about our AoE. I mean, that's like the biggest, I guess, gripe I have. I really love Moonkin. I've been playing it for a really long time. I mean, the form's funny looking, so that's fun. But, I mean, Hurricane has always been kind of like that sort of thing, because we move in and out of eclipses, to where it's like it's strong sometimes, strong, not other times. And sure, like the balance or the damage is good and balanced, but like when you have a fight where adds randomly spawn, you can't really control that you're going to be in like a solar eclipse every single time those ads spawn. So it's not really AoE damage you have on demand, like other classes where it's, okay, AoE comes up, mine's here. Okay, AoE comes up, I'll start hellfiring. It's like you don't really have that on demand thing to go to.
That almost sounds like, not to totally tirade here, but that almost sounds like that Hurricane should work sort of like Frostfire Bolt, where it does both nature or arcane damage, whichever is stronger.
It does arcane damage when you go into Lunar.
Sure.
But Hurricane is actually still higher. It's still like its coefficient is higher.
Interesting.
And when you're out of it, and when you have 0 energy and you're pushing into Eclipse, it's not doing the extra, 50-55% extra damage.
Oh. Well then. What about you, Cyous? Anything else? I mean, I don't mean to soapbox. It's either or. You can give tips, tricks, hints, or whatever, or...
Not everybody can rant like I can.
I know. We had a little bit of Anna raids this episode. Just a little bit. You gotta have a little bit in each episode. Yeah. But Cyous, what about you?
It's more of an overall tip, but for the most part, don't be selfish. Do what's best for what your group needs. You're a Moonkin. Your job isn't to do Warlock style damage or mage damage. You're there to help the raid succeed through your utility for the most part. So think about it in a utility sense, not just whatever Simcraft tells you.
Oh. Makes sense. I mean, our talk about the middle part of the show with all the stuff that you guys bring to the raid really imparts upon that mentality. You are sort of a really big battery for the raid in a lot of sense. You have so many, buffs or cooldowns, things that you can use. So yeah.
Well,
When you do your job
people
right,
forget.
people do everything else better.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's always really annoying when you're in that raid with the person. Well, I've never played with a Moonkin like this because our Moonkin is awesome. But when you're in the raid with that person who would say, moan when they're asked to give symbiosis to a specific person because they're not getting the ability they want. No, you should do what's best for the raid and use your abilities for all 25 people or all 10 people or all 20 people as the case may be. I hate those people who are like, no, I don't want to, give my symbiosis here or use this ability here because I want to use it somewhere else. No, you should do what's best for everyone. So I think we can all get behind that piece of advice.
Sure. I know Zoom was going to say something too.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, at the end of the day, you're trying to kill bosses. You're not...
Yep.
I mean, that's why you're doing PvE. I mean, you can do parsing and all that stuff after the boss is dead, but, when you're really getting down to it, you're trying to make sure the boss dies. So you're trying to make sure that, since your class does bring so much utility, that you're utilizing that. I mean, there are some classes, and some people who play some classes who would love to be able to help the raid out to kill a boss other than just damage, but they can't. So, I mean, they focus on what they can do, like, say, a mage or something. But as a Moonkin, you can definitely save people with an NS, healing touch. You can, Heart of the Wild Trank and save a bunch of people. You have snares, stuns, roots that you can make sure that you're using all those abilities in a fight to make sure the boss dies, even if you're sacrificing a couple casts. I mean, there's time to, play with meters or do whatever you want later.
Yep.
Just focus on, getting that progression done first.
That is true. You gotta kill the bosses first, then you can brag about them, and then you can, get all the fun gear to do all the damages. So, well, all right. I think that is gonna be that. We're a little bit over. But that's totally okay. There is still, Anna's talking about it in chat right now, but we do have an after show that we do every week that is just a candid talk to the chat room thing. But I have pressed the button, so we'll go around here. Cyous, thank you very much again for being on the show from Promethean.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Again, Cyous will have that spreadsheet out sometime. You can get him on the Twitter at Cyouskin, Cyouskin on Twitter, and you can follow him there. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you.
It was awesome. It was very awesome. Zoomkins from Blood Legion. He's also on the Twitters at ZoomkinsBL. Was awesome, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're actually going to be raiding here in a couple hours, too, for our main raid.
Oh, okay. So are you streaming tonight, too?
Yep, I will be streaming tonight for our main raid. So
very awesome.
Cool. We'll have to link.
Check that
Did
out.
we link your Twitch in chat? I don't think so. Link it in Skype. I'll link it in chat.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Also, again, back from Honduras. Glad to have her always here. My awesome co-host, Anna Fail. She's on the Twitters as well.
I might disappear next week if I go back to the Caribbean just to dive for a living. But
oh, yeah? Just, okay.
Yeah. It might be, bye guys, quitting WoW, gonna go train as a dive master. It's
well,
gonna happen.
just give me a heads up first. Just let me know.
I would give you 2 weeks notice. No, I love the show. I'm really glad to be back. I missed you guys last week. I was here via Skype on my phone, but it wasn't nearly the same. I didn't get to hang out with chat, and that's like my favorite part.
Yeah.
So I missed all of you guys, and it's really nice to see everyone again this week.
Okay. Very awesome. And again, she's on Twitter at Anafeel. You can follow her there. And then I'm over here. I'm on twitch.tv. I'm BayTLM. That's you can find all my social media stuff. That's what I'm doing outside of the shows for streaming raids or Risk of Rain or Chrono Trigger or whatever the heck my fancy is. So, chat room was awesome tonight. Have a good one. We will see you next week at 1 p.m. PST, 4 EST, and 10 CET for Prot Paladins. Trekkie and Slootbag will be here next week to talk all about...
You didn't tell me that was who we got next week. Yes! Sorry, that's so exciting. I love those guys. Trekkie and Slootbag. Ooh, I'm excited.
Yep, so Protodins next week. We will see you guys there, and if you want to hang out for the after show, we'll see you shortly. But if not, have a great one, have a good reset, and we will see you later. Have a good one, guys. Oh, I hit the wrong button. Blah, bye-bye.